What is up, everybody? It's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and in this video I will be explaining the backstory of every single student from Class 1A using all of the information that we have available so far. Class 1A is full of interesting characters with compelling backstories. And even though we know more about some of the students than we do about others, I thought that it would be useful to gather all of that information right here in one video for your convenience. If you enjoy the MHA content on this channel and you want us to keep it going, do me a favor and leave a like and comment. It only takes a second, and it's a completely free way to directly support this channel. And of course, if you're new to Anime Uproar, or maybe you watch our videos but you haven't subscribed yet, make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. A big thank you to all of our Anime Uproar patrons who make long and time-consuming videos like this one possible. I will talk more about Patreon at the end of the video, but first, a note for anime onlys. In this video, I've done my best to avoid big spoilers while still keeping the essence of each backstory. That said, the manga is far ahead of the anime, so if you are super sensitive to all spoilers, this is your warning. Let's start it off with the student who sits in seat number 1, Yuga Aoyama. Aoyama was born in France, although his name suggests that he is ethnically Japanese, or at least that one of his parents is Japanese. The connection to France explains why Aoyama likes to eccentrically scream out French words at random times, and I've actually heard him referred to as a weeaboo. So like a weeaboo but for French culture instead of Japanese. And you know what? I actually think that's pretty hilarious and kind of accurate. But despite his over-the-top persona that is full of life and twinkles, Aoyama actually had a very difficult childhood. When his quirk first started to manifest at a young age, some sort of birth defect led to Aoyama's laser beams leaking out of his navel. This made him feel like an outcast and like something was wrong with him. I imagine that the other children were probably scared of him because they didn't want him to accidentally shoot lasers at them, which must have made Aoyama feel extremely isolated and lonely. He even asked his parents why he was so different from everyone else and why he had to deal with such pain and loneliness. Thankfully, Aoyama eventually received a special belt that allowed him to control his quirk and prevent the lasers from leaking out. And he still wears this special belt, known as the Sparkle Belt, every single day. At first glance, Aoyama may come off as an overconfident elitist who thinks he is better than everyone else, but this is just his way of compensating for the inferiority complex that he developed during his difficult childhood. Next up, let's talk about the student who sits in seat number 2, our girl Pinky, aka Mina Ashido. Mina comes from Chiba Prefecture in Japan, and she and Kirishima actually went to the same middle school. Even back in her middle school days, Mina was strong and confident, and she was considered to be a shoo-in for becoming a future pro hero by all her classmates. Mina was the kind of person who stood up to bullies and showed great bravery when it came to protecting her friends. One day when she and her friends had accidentally encountered Gigantomachia on the street, Mina was the only one who summed up the courage to speak to him. Her friends were all terrified by this giant man who was clearly aggressive and prone to violence. But Mina summed up the courage to trick him into leaving her and her friends alone. Kirishima actually witnessed this incident from a distance, as well as a previous incident in which Mina diffused a bullying situation. And this inspired Kirishima to become a better person and a better hero. So yeah, Mina actually played an important role in shaping Kirishima into the person that he is today. In seat number 3, we have Tsuyu Asui, aka Froppy. Born in Aichi Prefecture, Tsuyu grew up as the oldest of 3 siblings. She has a younger brother and a younger sister. And because her parents traveled a lot for work, Tsuyu was largely the one responsible for raising her siblings, even though she herself was still just a child. But despite having so much responsibility thrown at her at such a young age, Tsuyu never complained and she loved her siblings and her life. But because she was always busy taking care of her siblings, and because some people didn't like her frog-like appearance, Tsuyu didn't really have friends. But then she met Habuko Mongoose, a girl at her middle school who also had no friends because of her snake-like appearance, which seemed to scare most people. Tsuyu recognized that Habuko was lonely just like she was, so one day Tsuyu asked Habuko to be friends. Habuko was surprised, but she was also delighted, and the two of them became friends. They remained close throughout middle school, and even though they ended up going to different schools, they are still friends and they still stay in touch. Tsuyu also remains close with her younger siblings, and she stays in touch with them on a regular basis. In seat number 4, we have the stern and morally upright class representative, Tenya Ida. Tenya is from Tokyo, and he was born into the prestigious Ida family, which has produced successful pro heroes for generations. The Idas are known for their engine-based speed quirks, and because of his prestigious lineage, Tenya attended a private school before joining the UA. Tenya was especially inspired by his older brother Tensei, who became the famous pro hero Ingenium. Tenya always looked up to his brother, and it was Tenya's admiration of Tensei that motivated him to be responsible, disciplined, and work hard to become a pro hero. Tenya was devastated after Tensei was critically wounded by the hero killer Stain. Tensei survived, but he was left paralyzed by his injuries and he was forced to retire from being a hero. Tenya then inherited his older brother's hero name, Ingenium. Next up, we have the student in seat number 5, Ochako Uraraka. She was born in Mie Prefecture in the Kansai region of Japan, and her parents own a construction business. Unfortunately, Ochako's parents' construction business has been suffering, and so the family has been facing some financial hardship. But despite these financial issues, Ochako's parents were always loving and caring towards her, and so Ochako decided that she wanted to help her parents. In fact, Ochako offered to use her gravity quirk to help with the family business, since her ability to make large objects weightless would be an immense advantage in any construction project. However, Ochako's parents wanted their daughter to follow her own dreams. So instead of asking her to dedicate herself to helping the struggling family business, they encouraged her to pursue her own dream of becoming a hero. Ochako agreed because she really wanted to help people, but she also hopes to earn enough money as a pro hero to ease the financial burden of her parents. In seat number 6 is Mashirao Ojiro, also known as the guy whose quirk is just having a big tail. I mean, his quirk is literally just named Tail, so yes, he has a tail, that's it. We don't have a lot of information about Ojiro's life before he entered UA. We just know that he was born in Tokyo and that he has a background in martial arts. That actually makes perfect sense, since Ojiro's quirk doesn't have any cool special powers or abilities, it's just an extra appendage. But using martial arts allows Ojiro to make the best of his quirk by turning it into a valuable tool in combat. Then we have our boy Electric Saitama, also known as Denki Kaminari, who sits in seat number 7. Coincidentally, Kaminari was born in Saitama Prefecture, and we know that he craves positive attention from other people, especially from girls. Kaminari prioritizes socializing to his academic studies, and he is very concerned with his public image. But even though Kaminari would love to be the coolest guy in class, he often does things that end up making him look silly rather than cool. In seat number 8 is the manliest of hero students, Eijiro Kirishima. Like Mina, Kirishima is from Chiba Prefecture, and as I mentioned earlier, the two of them went to the same middle school. Kirishima's hardening quirk first manifested when he was only 3 years old. One night he woke up to pee in the middle of the night, and when he rubbed his eyes, his quirk suddenly manifested on his hand, and the resulting injury left a scar on his right eye. This traumatic first experience made Kirishima hate his quirk, at least initially. As a kid, Kirishima idolized the chivalrous hero Crimson Riot, who also possesses a hardening type quirk just like Kirishima. Crimson Riot stresses the importance of having a manly spirit and being willing to train hard regardless of how strong your quirk is. And so Kirishima embraced this philosophy and used it as motivation to make himself stronger. Kirishima knew Mina in middle school, and this was a period of his life in which he lacked courage and confidence. Mina's bravery and strong personality inspired Kirishima, and eventually he decided to change his entire image, including dyeing his hair red to look more like Crimson Riot. Kirishima eventually adopted the hero name Red Riot as a tribute to his favorite hero. Next up is Koji Koda, also known as the petting hero Anima, who sits in seat number 9. Koda hails from Iwate Prefecture, and he is a shy and quiet guy who appears to be more comfortable around nature and animals than around humans. In fact, Koda is so quiet that even though Class 1A was first introduced in Chapter 5 of the manga, Koda doesn't have his first line of dialogue until Chapter 66. Koda's quirk gives him the ability to communicate with and command animals. But ironically, he has an extreme fear of bugs. This proves to be a challenge for Koda at first, because manipulating bugs could be a very useful ability if only he can overcome his phobia of bugs. We don't know much more about his backstory, other than the fact that he has a loving mother who is very proud and supportive of her son. Then we have Rikido Sato, also known as Sugar Man, who sits in seat number 10. Sato was born in the Tottori prefecture of Japan, and we know that he is a very skilled baker. Baking is of course related to his quirk, Sugar Rush, but it also appears to be somewhat of a passion for Sato. However, when his classmates pointed out just how good his baking was, Sato seemed surprised since he didn't think that his baking skills were anything special. This might suggest that he comes from a baking family, perhaps baking is his family's business. And so Sato grew up comparing himself to other skilled bakers in his family, and that is why he doesn't think that his own skills are anything special. That is just speculation though, because we really don't know much about Sato's backstory at this point in time. In seat number 11, we have Mezo Shoji, who was born in Fukuoka Prefecture. We know that Shoji is not materialistic and that he is fine with having only a few possessions. This suggests that he comes from a family of modest means and that he likely had a very humble childhood. We also know that growing up, Shoji faced prejudice and discrimination as a result of his unique appearance. Shoji's mutant-type quirk makes his appearance permanently different from that of ordinary people. And so according to Shoji, people were often frightened by his physical appearance. This is why Shoji wears a mask over his face at all times. At one point in his past, the sight of his face had made a little girl cry, and so Shoji decided to always cover his face so that it never causes sadness to anyone else. As a result, we still have no idea what Shoji actually looks like beneath his mask. This in itself is pretty sad. Shoji feels like he has to cover his face for the sake of others. But the fact that he is willing to do this in the first place also speaks to the kind of person that he is. Despite his intimidating appearance, Shoji is actually a very kind and compassionate person. Next up is the rock star of Class 1A, Kyoka Jiro, who sits in seat number 12. Hailing from Shizuoka Prefecture, Kyoka comes from a family of musicians, and she grew up with music as an important part of her life. She can sing and play multiple instruments, and her parents were hoping that Kyoka would become a musician like them. But even though Kyoka loves music, her dream was to become a hero so that she could dedicate her life to helping other people. Ultimately, Kyoka's parents supported her decision to choose her own path and become a hero rather than a musician. Then we have Flex Tape Spider-Man himself, Hanta Sero, who sits in seat number 13. Sero was born in Tokyo, and he is a very friendly and social guy. Although he is not as forward about it as Mineta and Kaminari, Sero definitely has a strong interest in the ladies, and in general, he is a fun guy to be around. Although we don't know much about his background, we do know that Horikoshi came up with the idea for his quirk while shopping in a convenience store. And Horikoshi has also stated that Sero's quirk is one of his personal favorites. In seat number 14, we have the one and only Chicken of Darkness, Fumikage Tokoyami. Tokoyami comes from Shizuoka Prefecture, and he is a very quiet, reserved, and independent guy. Tokoyami has an affinity for darkness, and he is often jokingly referred to as an emo by the MHA fanbase because of his fashion sense and his taste in room decor. He is also very interested in things like fantasy and the occult, so he's kind of a cool, dark, emo nerd. We still haven't gotten a proper deep dive into Tokoyami's backstory, but we can assume that his quiet and introspective personality is a result of his appearance and his quirk. Tokoyami probably faced prejudice and discrimination for his bird-like appearance, and since his quirk, Dark Shadow, is the type of quirk that can go berserk, it's likely that some of the other kids were afraid of Tokoyami during his childhood. As a result, Tokoyami probably retreated into himself and developed his own unique interests and identity without relying on the approval of others. Next up, we have Shoto Todoroki, who sits in seat number 15, and whose backstory has actually been explored at great length. Shoto's father is, of course, the former number 2 and current number 1 pro hero, Endeavor. Shoto also has 3 older siblings, 2 brothers, and 1 sister. Shoto's father spent most of his life desperately trying to surpass All Might, and when he eventually realized that this would be impossible, Endeavor decided to find a wife with the ideal quirk and then raise children who would one day surpass All Might. So Endeavor married Rei in what is known as a quirk marriage. Endeavor believed that Rei's ice-based quirk would be an ideal pairing with his flame-based quirk, and Rei's family thought that a union with the wealthy and prominent Todoroki family would be a solution to their financial troubles. Rei agreed to the marriage out of a sense of duty to her family, but this was very much a marriage of convenience rather than love. After the first 3 Todoroki children didn't quite possess the ideal quirks that Endeavor was looking for, he was finally satisfied with the quirk of his 4th child, Shoto, who had the unique ability to use both fire and ice. Endeavor was convinced that Shoto would one day surpass All Might. So Endeavor separated Shoto from the rest of his siblings, and instead of letting him play with his brothers and sister, Endeavor pushed Shoto to train constantly in order to get stronger. In the process of training Shoto, Endeavor also neglected his other children, and his relationship with his wife Rei became strained. Shoto himself began to resent his father because of his treatment of Rei, and also because he wouldn't let Shoto have a normal childhood. Things only got worse after Shoto's oldest brother Toya was presumed to have been killed in a horrible fire. The tragedy led Endeavor to focus even more obsessively on training Shoto, and it also led Rei to lose her mental stability. After Rei suffered a mental breakdown and poured boiling water on Shoto's face, she ended up in a mental institution. Shoto blamed Endeavor for everything that happened to his mother and to his entire family, and he spent much of his life completely rejecting his father. For a long time, he even refused to use the flame side of his quirk because it came from his father. But eventually, Shoto came to accept both sides of his quirk, and since then he has made some slow but significant progress in reconciling with Endeavor. Then we have the invisible girl, Toru Hagakure, who sits in seat number 16. Very little is known about Toru, other than the fact that she was born in Tokyo, and that both of her parents apparently have the same invisibility type quirk as she does. Toru has a bubbly personality, and she loves to hang out with the class 1A girls, gossip about boys, go shopping, and all of that fun teenage girl stuff. Since Toru is permanently invisible, we don't know what she actually looks like, and because her quirk is so perfect for covert activities, many MHA fans believe that Toru might be the UA traitor who is leaking vital information about the UA to the League of Villains. However, there is no real evidence for this, and the story hasn't really mentioned the traitor in a long time. So at this point, many of us are wondering whether the traitor thing is even a thing anymore. In seat number 17, we have the legendary Lord Explosion Murder himself, Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo comes from the same neighborhood in Shizuoka Prefecture as Deku does, and the two of them grew up together. Deku always looked up to Bakugo since Bakugo had a lot of confidence and a cool explosion quirk that always impressed everyone. Eventually, all of that praise went to Bakugo's head, and he became arrogant and sometimes downright mean. He actually gave Izuku Midoriya the nickname Deku, but he meant it to be an insult, although Deku eventually just embraced the nickname and even made it his official hero name. Bakugo was also a big fan of All Might, just like Deku, and he aspired to one day become the kind of ultimate winner that All Might was. The young Bakugo firmly believed that a great hero will always win no matter what, and All Might was the embodiment of that principle. By the time that he got to middle school, Bakugo became an outright bully, and he would often lose his temper and berate and abuse others, including Deku. Since Deku was born without a quirk, Bakugo often mocked Deku's ambition to get into UA and become a hero. So yeah, Bakugo went through a phase in which he was an arrogant bully who was constantly followed around by butt-kissing lackeys. Thankfully, he did eventually emerge out of that phase and develop as a character, although he continues to have a wild temper and a short fuse. Oh, and he has a hot mom. Yes, I said it, no regrets. Next up in seat number 18 is the protagonist of our story, the one and only Izuku Midoriya, also known as Deku. Hailing from Shizuoka Prefecture just like Bakugo, Deku began to idolize All Might at a very young age, and it was his greatest dream in life to become a hero like All Might. Unfortunately, Deku was born without a quirk in a world where the vast majority of people possess quirks. This made it almost impossible for Deku to become a hero, since all the other heroes and villains would possess extremely strong and useful special abilities, and he would have nothing. The realization that he was quirkless absolutely crushed Deku, But even after realizing that he didn't have a quirk, Deku stubbornly continued to dream about one day becoming a hero. He dedicated himself to joining the UA, Japan's most prestigious school for hero students. But the very idea of someone without a quirk joining the UA was so crazy that Deku was often mocked and belittled for even considering the possibility of getting accepted into that school. Luckily for Deku, he would eventually cross paths with All Might, who chose Deku to be his successor. As a result, Deku inherited the transferable quirk One for All by consuming a strand of All Might's hair. And his newfound quirk, combined with his commitment to his academic studies, allowed him to pass the UA entrance exam. Deku has a caring and extremely loving mother named Inko, who worries about him a lot because being a pro hero is a dangerous job. But at the same time, she is also extremely supportive of her son's dream. On the other hand, Deku's father went out to buy Yu-Gi-Oh cards and never came back. Okay, not really, but all we know about him is that his name is Hisashi Midoriya and that he has a fire-breathing quirk. He apparently works abroad, and we have never even seen him. I mean, we've never even seen Deku or Inko communicating directly with him in any way. So just your typical shonen anime dad. Hailing from Kanagawa Prefecture is the man, the myth, the legend, Minoru Mineta, who sits in seat number 19. We don't know much about his backstory, but Mineta is known for being completely obsessed with girls and for easily being the perviest character in the entire story. It's likely that this type of behavior started at a young age, so we can assume that Mineta spent a lot of time surfing the internet alone, in his room, in the dark, if you know what I mean. Despite being quite intelligent, Mineta keeps coming up with stupid pervy schemes, like trying to peek on the girls in the public bath. But whenever he tries something like this, he ends up getting wrecked and suffering some serious consequences. I can't help but think that he has a lot of potential, as long as he starts putting more focus on being a hero and less focus on perving out. Mineta really wants to be popular and loved, so he should do his best to achieve that goal through heroics and not through trying to unsuccessfully create his own harem. Personally, I think it would be hilarious if Mineta one day found a girlfriend that was an even bigger perv than him. Come on, Horikoshi, let's make it happen. And finally, we have the undisputed best girl in Class 1A, Momo Yaoyorozu, who sits in seat number 20. Oh, and if you disagree with my accurate opinion that Momo is best girl, feel free to rant about it down in the comments. Engagement helps this video anyway. Momo was born in Aichi Prefecture into a very wealthy family. The Yaoyorozus are a famous and prominent hero family with powerful quirks, and Momo's quirk creation is no exception. Momo obviously had a very privileged upbringing due to her family's wealth, but being rich did not make her arrogant or lazy. Momo works extremely hard, she is an excellent student, and she is an expert strategist. She puts a lot of effort into learning to use her quirk in the most effective way, and she also puts incredible amounts of thought into her plans and strategies. Momo is also humble, friendly, and all around best girl material. And that is it, all 20 Class 1A students and their backstories explained. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Boku no Hero content, please leave that like, it means a lot. And if you're new to Anime Uproar, or maybe you watch our videos but you haven't subscribed yet, make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You really have to go through the trouble of subscribing, hitting that bell, and then selecting the option that says all. I know it's annoying, but if you don't do that, you're still gonna miss a ton of our videos, even if you are subscribed. It's just how YouTube works. Shout out to 414 Anime for helping me out with the research for this video. Check out his anime channel and show him some love, link in the description. A big thank you to all of our Anime Uproar patrons for making videos like this one possible. Special thank you to Alpha Sigma, Red Haired Raven, and AV. These guys are absolute mad lads and disciples of Lord Twigo himself. And I can't forget all of our The One tier patrons, the ones who rise above all other clans, including Ingrata, Pate Hefa, Aljatal, Dr. Courtman, The Toasted Chi, Bang, Emperor Otaku, Spidey Life Tanel, Tungsten Tarkus, Baked Buddhist, and Yuno. Finally, thank you also to our Pro Hero tier patrons, including the one and only Gilgamesh, Steelers, Angel Cruz, Anatoly Kazatsky, Cricket XP, Rathuin Deora, Very Gucci, Alicia Akhter, Bonnie Parks, Hinokami and Water, Joanne Garcia, Ted No Ted, iSparky65, Jessica LaFond, Metal Mama, Corey McGowan, Fatboy Games, Deadly Saint, Soul Ray Slice and Dice, and Pillu. If you enjoy our videos and you feel that they provide value for you, consider supporting us on Patreon. Even a single dollar will give you access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and your name will appear in our videos along with these legendary people. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!